purpose in work is a kind of a hot topic. And I know purpose is important to you. So you're on to your next company, Tilliden, and it seems to be more than just a company. So why don't you tell us about what you're doing at the moment and what you're up to?
I'd love to. Well, first I'm going to start with the name Tilliden. It's derived from the Danish word of trust, tillid, which is a meaning of trust that doesn't quite exist in English. And it has shades of economic mutual benefit. So trust in Tillid is our community or our society is benefiting economically by trusting each other. And I find that beautiful. And when I was thinking about this, I was, of course, you check the domain names and there's Tillid, and of course that's taken. But the singular possessive of Tillid is Tilliden, which means all inclusive. And I just checked out of the whim and it was free. So I took it in GoDaddy and I'm like, that's my sign. Like this is the new thing I have to latch onto. So there's a couple of foundational parts of this. I read a book by some Brits actually called The Spirit Level. And it talks about the harmful effects of inequality in a society. So the more unequal the society, the worse the society's health outcomes. So America is the world's most unequal society. Sadly, the UK is not close behind, and then there's Australia. And if you look at really fundamental measures of health, like infant mortality rates, obesity, drug and opiate addiction, longevity, mental health, in every single area, the more unequal the society, the worse the society does. And so one of the contributing factors of inequality is financial inequity and financial illiteracy. So then the question becomes, how do we teach financial literacy? I have a background in educational technology, and one of the things that we know about teaching kids is that you want to create what's called an authentic experience or an authentic question. Instead of telling the kids what to do, you want to create an opportunity where they construct knowledge through something that's motivating to them, not motivating to the teacher or the parent.
Maybe playful. Maybe playful, right? Maybe playful. Yeah.
Yeah, and playful. So you roll all those together and you end up with a technique that I brought to the Agile community, but has been practiced in the public sector for a while, called participatory budgeting. And participatory budgeting is where a community collaboratively determines how to invest a shared budget. And it always goes through 5 phases. In phase 1, there's some thematic structure about kind of what's important to us or where do we want to go. In phase 2, we apply design thinking and we create ideas. It's divergent thinking. It's, creating ideas and proposals. In phase 3, we are shaping those proposals into something that could potentially be funded. For example, when we have done this in schools, sometimes the kids will create great ideas, but they're just outside the budget. So that's where you're looking at things like, is this feasible? How many kids would benefit? Does the school benefit, or is it just a subset of the school? And in phase 4, you are collaboratively choosing the ideas that you're going to implement. And in phase 5, you're actually funding and implementing the ideas themselves. And notice that there's a distinction between this is what I want to do versus this is what I'm funding, because in the funding phase, you're roping back into teaching financial literacy, right? It's teaching how a budget works in a way that is meaningful. And our tagline for the company is trust the community. And in this case, when we're dealing with the school, it's trust the kids. And adults often say things like, well, what are the kids going to pick with the money? They're going to pick a party. Well, they never do, right? If you actually look at the data of schools that have done participatory budgeting, kids pick amazing ideas that they control, that the adults never would have thought of, but are always sensible and wonderful in once you see what they do. So Tilliden is designed to bring participatory budgeting to schools around the world. And our BHAG, which stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal, is a tagline that we've created: 1K, 1M, 1B. We want to put $1,000 into 1,000,000 schools globally and watch what happens. This is the game part, because we don't know what's going to happen. Watch what happens when kids around the world are controlling at least $1 billion of capital without the interference of adults.
I would love to see that happen. So, wow, what a cool thing. So if I summarize that then, so Tilliden is this idea, Danish word for trust. And you'd recognize that in communities, in society as a whole, inequality drives poor outcomes for people, and you particularly isolated around their, particularly poor financial literacy, and is one of the drivers to inequality, certainly. So how are we going to, as a community, as a society, going to make our societies more equal, more fair? Well, let's teach kids how to be more financially responsible, not only for themselves, but within the communities they operate within. So you've got this focus, and taking the idea that you've got from your agile work in participatory budgeting, you're going to try and teach children through the course of Tilliden and using Tilliden, which are people, you'll tell us about what it is, to manage their own finances, to see their decision making in action, to take ownership, understand how budgets work, how cooperation and organization works, to then help schools also, I suppose, fund themselves, right? So was that a good summary of sort of where you're kind of
Absolutely. That's a
Awesome.
fantastic summary. And, I have seen magic happen. And, this notion of participatory budgeting is cross-cultural. I've done participatory budgeting in Bogota, Colombia, in London, in Poznan, Poland, in Eilat, Israel, in Singapore, in New Zealand, in Australia, in Sweden. I mean, you pick places and you see this notion of participatory budgeting because people want to have that involvement. And the particular focus of Tilliden is the magic that occurs in schools. And you can imagine how awful it is for kids to walk into a finance class or a business class and be given these awful word problems like, Bob and Jane want to go to the store. They have 10 pounds and apples are,
£1.50.
$1.99 a pound.
They're getting more expensive.
How many apples can they buy? I mean, it's just awful. But you convert that into, in one project we did, the kids decided that they wanted to get a 3D printer, and they're like, okay, we want a 3D printer. And of course, as adults, we said, great, it's your idea. How much does it cost? And of course, as a father, that when the kids get inspired by something, they'll learn all about it. So they came back and they knew everything there was about 3D printers. You can get a cheap one that won't last. You could get an industrial strength one that we can't afford. And then we can get this one. And then, of course, you're teaching them. You say, okay, you've got the printer. Did you consider the supplies as part of the budget? Oh, we have to consider supplies. Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. And so the kids are learning, but it's authentic knowledge that they care about, and not something you're telling them to learn, but they're learning, okay, what is a budget? And what's and now we can add all of our adult terms. We can say, the capital printer is the 3D printer is a capital expense and the supplies are an operating expense. I mean, we can add all that crap. But the point is that the kids are now learning on their own terms for their own reasons, and they are intrinsically motivated to figure that out.